Hello friends, welcome to the offlane tier list for patch 7.34e. Sorry this took so long. I've been working on a Kickstarter for a game that I'm making, which I'm very excited about. Link in description below. But anyway, let's get into the offlaners that are good on this patch, starting with the bad ones. So in the dogshit tier, as you can see up there, I actually don't have anything listed. This is one of the first times, and that's because anything that I would consider to be egregiously bad in the offlane is just not an offlaner. All of the staple offlaners in Dota right now are actually not bad. So there's nothing in the dogshit tier, but there's plenty in the D tier. So let's start with Sanking. So this hero has one main issue, I would say, and that is that he is a blink stunning team fighter, and this is not a blink stunning team fighter meta. A lot of offlaners are just sitting in the lane, pushing towers, being real tanky. Sanking is not particularly good at that. But when the meta trends towards the blink stunning offlaners, which it always does at some point, it's a cycle, then I think Sanking will be good because they've reduced the cooldown on Burrow Strike, and this is one of the best stuns in the game. Also, his level 1 through 4 is completely garbage. It's very hard to lane with him in the early levels if people are good, and that is a hugely snowbally thing right now. Bristleback, this hero was the most ridiculous, overpowered, disgusting thing on the previous patch. You would go one level in Bristleback because that meant you were taking more damage and therefore quilling a lot more and get Bloodstone, lifesteal to full HP while killing the entire enemy team. It was fucking stupid. That build was never meant to exist, and Valve made sure to make that a point, where in the E patch, they made it so the damage threshold scales on Bristleback. So you now want to level up this passive, and you can't just leave it at level 1, or it feels a lot worse to leave it at level 1. Also, they reduced the max amount of damage that Quill Spray can do, meaning that you're not quilling for fucking 550 or whatever it was damage on every single hit. That was insane, especially when you consider the fact that he's lifestealing for all of that. So Bristleback is actually not that good, surprisingly, compared to how he was before. So Viper, I think Viper is honestly just a hero that's in need of some love. There was a while there where people were going for the Aghanim Scepter build, but it's a little bit too slow, building into the Bloodstone, which got nerfed because other heroes were building Bloodstone. That was kind of the only thing that was like viable on him, bringing him back into the offlane meta. If you're playing Viper into a Drow or like an Oracle as a position 5, there's just a lot of trending 5s and carries that I don't think Viper really hard counters. If it was like Ursa every game, maybe Viper would be good, but then I still think that you would go through the portal and kill him. I'm not a huge fan of these offlaners that you can just like kill to deal with them, because Weaver and CK, these carries that just like kill you, especially with the roaming pause for like Tusk, which is very popular. If you kill Viper once in lane as an offlaner, his game is done. A lot of these other offlaners are not like that. They're so hard to kill, it's not even worth it to rotate 3 heroes to them. Dragon Knight. I don't actually think this hero is that bad in general. I will say he's a bit slow. Like the way that people played him that I thought wasn't bad on the previous patch was the Midas, Aghanim Scepter, Manta style, having a bunch of black dragons running around. That is good, but the meta is shifting towards a lot of heavy push and a lot of early game and fighting, and Dragon Knight, surprisingly, at the very least, the way that you would want to build him, where he's a good hero, which is that black dragon, he's not actually good at that right now, and he's a blink stunner just like Sanking if you play him in the offlane, so it's a bit rough for him. Speaking of blink stunners, Mars, this hero he's been in a rough spot since they nerfed the cooldown on his ultimate, which was a very long time ago. They've also nerfed damage on it dozens of times. They nerfed the stun duration on Spear. It's abusable in lane as well. Mars is just too good when in the hands of a really good player like Collapse. So Valve keeps nerfing it because they want to just nerf Collapse. And so all the regular Mars players are like, what the fuck, dude? Mars is in a pretty bad spot. He's got a very low win rate, and he's had a low win rate for quite some time now. Necros, he was very strong. Probably a better mid laner. I think he still is a better mid laner currently, where you go for the Quinn build, which is the Wraith Band, Bracer, travels into Heart, and then Aghanim Scepter. But they nerfed him in the letter patch. They removed a little bit of duration on the regen that you get, which is significant because that regen, you are also doing damage with the Aghanim Scepter based on that. That is going to hurt your sustainability in lane and your ability to spam, and he's got very high mana costs. The nerfs to him in the letter patch are definitely noticeable, but he's still he's still okay. Like, if you're up against the right thing, he's decent. But I will say that, like, I like him better as a mid laner now. Death Prophet. This hero, I would say the biggest struggle for her, that partly due to the Heart Blade Mail meta, people have been picking a lot of incredibly bursty stuff, like Muerta, Drow, Lina, spell damage mid, you know, playing to, like, one-shot people. And Death Prophet fucking hates burst. And I don't think she's the greatest Heart Blade Mail carrier either. I think you probably would have gone for it anyway on the last patch if she were viable. But all of her positives, like the fact that she can, you know, press ult twice and take a tower, like all of that stuff doesn't really matter that much anymore. Even the Beastmasters and Lycans of the world that are good at pushing towers and are actually good offlaners right now are not necessarily good because they push towers, but they're better because they can take map control. And you don't really care that much about towers. So Death Prophet is, yeah, little sus. Also, Ancient Apparition, Spirit Vessel, lots of these like healing reduction things are fine. Broodmother, this is a universal hero. I think the way to play her is by going for the Echo Saber, Manta style, Scotty, like that sort of bullshit. That is still the best way to play her. That got giga nerfed because people are playing her as a mid and as a carry. In fact, a lot of these universal heroes got nerfed. And I don't think any of the recent buffs on Brood have been enough to make her super viable. I also think that a lot of the heroes that Brood doesn't like to play against are very strong. Like Kunkka, for example, is one of the best heroes in Dota still. Completely destroys Brood. Monkey King is fine. You know, Bristleback, he's fine as well, especially if you get him against Brood. Earthshaker is very good. I know you see him here in the D tier, but that's because this is the offlane tier list. I actually think he's a good mid. But anyway, let's move on to that. We'll just go to Earthshaker next because, like I said, this is an easy one. I just think that mid is probably his role, and then his second best role is 4, and then offlane. Offlane is this weird mix where it's like, am I going for the Blink Dagger? Am I going for Aghanim Scepter, trying to one-shot people? Like, what am I doing here? It feels like there's the identity of him being a team fighter, where you get the Blink Dagger and the Aghanim Shard, and then there's the identity of him being this like Giga Chad one-shotting people with Enchant Totem, and that's the mid Earthshaker. And offlane falls uncomfortably in between. I guess I can speak on these last 3 heroes quickly, because Nature's Prophet, Bat, and Venomancer, I consider all of these to actually be good heroes. I would just say that Nature's is exclusively a 5 right now. Actually, I shouldn't say exclusively a support, sometimes a 4, mostly a 5. And I think he's a very good hero, and I felt like it's a sin to not put him in the offlane tier list, because I know at some point he will become an offlaner again. This hero is an offlaner for life. So is Batrider, same thing, but he's more of a support right now, playing with high universal hero damage, cutting waves, stacking jungle camps for himself, blinking, initiating, being annoying, low cooldown on lasso. Venomancer, same thing. He's mostly a 5. I mean, there's like the speed Dota jungle Venomancer shit. Nobody really does that anymore with the position 4, but because it's griefing. But the 5 Veno is very good. So going back, we have 2 left in the D tier. Timbersaw. My one like anecdote about Timber is that Whisper, the best Timber player in the world, plays this hero without fucking skilling reactive armor. Think about that for a second. He doesn't skill reactive armor. That's how dog shit this ability is. I can't put him higher than D tier. I can't do it. He's been nerfed way too much, because when Universal Heroes got released, he was like the most ridiculous one out of all of them, and he has since not recovered. He is purely a nuker. That's it, which is sometimes okay. And if you're Whisper, you can pull it off, but then you don't go for one of his abilities, which is never a good sign. Doom. So I think Doom actually had a niche on the last patch. On the last patch, I probably would have put him at like B or C tier. But a lot of the heroes that Doom countered, such as Bristleback, fell off. And the reason that Doom was good is because Bristle was in literally every game that he was not banned. And now Bristle is only extremely niche picked. So Doom's kind of only significance is it also becomes niche by that nature. So Doom is not that good. And the reason that you would pick him against Bristle, by the way, is because of the healing reduction on Doom now. So it's a very specific counter to heroes that can be overpowered, and kind of not many of the heroes that he does counter are considered overpowered right now. Okie dokie, moving on to the C tier. Also lots of heroes in here. First up, we have Darkshear. I don't know why I sounded more Canadian when I talked about him, but anyway. This hero got nerfed recently. I think they increased the cooldown on Surge. They also reduced the damage on Vacuum, something like that. But the reason that I would say that he is popping back into the meta a little bit more is because with a lot of these other like Blade Mail, Heart sitting in the lane in front of your face, unkillable offlaners, as they're getting nerfed, then the value of Darkseer, who also offers a kind of similar utility, goes up because he's always been that guy that just kind of like, you know, sits in a lane, farms, takes control of an area, and eventually scales with utility to the point where like you can't kill his team and he's spawning illusions of you and shit. Like he scales in a very similar way to how these Heart Blade Mail builders would scale. And I don't even think it's like a particularly good like illusion meta. Because like let's say Terrorblade is like an S tier carry, then Darkseer immediately goes up crazy in value because he's the best counter to that. I think some illusion heroes are fine, but there's also plenty of non-illusion heroes being played in carry. So if those got picked, Darkseer would go up in value. Axe. So I think this hero is in not a bad spot. The Octarine Core Aghanim Scepter build where you're taunting people, it feels like you're permanently fucking taunted when you get to that point on Axe. The problem is it takes a very long time to get there. His late game is insane because of this. It's a BKB piercing stun that has extremely high uptime, and he does tons of damage and scales really well because he gets a bunch of armor as well. However, getting there can sometimes be tough. You can grief the laning stage. Vanguard has been nerfed a decent amount because it was extremely powerful a few patches ago. So Vanguard is not what it used to be. But with that being said, like I said, Axe has great scaling, and he's been buffed enough that he's semi-decent, even though the Blink offlane meta is not hugely popular right now. Primal Beast. So the way that I view this hero is that I still think it's very good despite the nerfs in the E patch. One of the nerfs was cooldown on his ultimate, so it feels a lot worse to just use it to farm, which I think is completely reasonable considering it's fucking BKB piercing. It does a ton of damage. But I would say that Primal is probably a better mid. Like a lot of these offlaners people are picking are ones that sit in lane and are just Giga Chads and unkillable, and they farm because of it. And then the mids are the ones that are roaming around and ganking and killing people. And Primal Beast is very good at that. So that's why I think as a mid, he makes a lot of sense. So Underlord does the things that I just mentioned. He will sit in a lane. He'll farm in front of you. He will be fairly unkillable. I would just say that the fact that like Lifestealer, for example, is one of the top tier carries in the patch, that really doesn't help. Razer is being picked up a decent amount as a carry, especially on Europe server. And that really fucks Underlord. Ursa's decent. I just don't think it's a great meta in terms of it's hard to make Underlord feel unkillable. But he's okay. Like, he's not bad. You can go for the Atos build and the Pit of Malice. It can still be very annoying, although people are getting tons of 4-staffs and, you know, things that can purge the pit. It doesn't feel like as egregious as it was at some point when, you know, Lotus and 4-staff wasn't super popular. But Underlord's okay. Razer, I also think this hero is just decent. He suffers from a similar thing to Viper, where if you bring a few heroes to him and kill him a couple of times, he can really fall off and then feel like a liability. However, if the enemy team picks some hero that has no getaway in the laning phase, like, for example, Lifestealer, especially because the way that he gets away from you is by going Magic Immune, Razer just doesn't give a shit. Even, like, Faceless Void has a small jump. Like, you can still dumpster him in lane with the Razer. So I think Razer has fairly decent carry matchups in this patch. It's just, I'm not 100% sure on what the build for offlane for him would be, because the carry build people are doing is like Maelstrom Manta, which would be griefing on the offlane. Offlane, you would probably still want to go like BKB Rush, but then that's just not a popular build on most heroes. I've seen people go Blade Mail Heart, but this hero doesn't really feel like that fits for him. I've seen a Bloodstone build. Maybe if somebody figures out a build for Razer that is like super good, the hero will come back. But for now, he's just decent. Dazzle, this is similar to Primal Beast, where I feel like this is actually an S tier hero. They just nerfed him, where the Blink Dagger now properly gets muted for 3 seconds or whatever it is with cooldown reduction, even if he refreshes it. So you can't just like refresh, blink, do the Tinker bullshit that Dazzle used to be able to do with his new ultimate. So yeah, like I said, they nerfed him. He's still a really good mid. That you really barely feel the impact of that change. However, I think he's exclusively a mid right now because like he dumpsters a lot of these mid heroes in lane, these Primal Beasts and Kunkas and stuff. People are picking mid, Earth Spirit as well. But in a side lane, it's a lot harder to dumpster these heroes. Like, good luck against a Muerta, for example. Good luck against an Oracle 5 who's going to purge your queue. These heroes will destroy you in lane, and then how do you farm? And you need to farm on this hero. Bounty Hunter. This is low-key maybe a busted hero. I just feel like I haven't seen enough to put it higher than C tier. But if you can pick Bounty against, like, Lifestealer, you just completely grief his game. They increased the damage on his Shuriken. They increased his base attack time. It just feels like this hero is constantly getting buffed. And the Aghanim Scepter build, like, you can snowball so hard on this guy where you're doing so much team damage to everyone. You just track them, and the Shuriken is bouncing around between everyone. Low-key, this hero might be broken, but we'll see. I put him in C tier for now. Chaos Knight, still a great carry, still a great offlaner. His late game is fucking crazy. His sustain is a lot worse now because of the healing on creeps being reduced significantly in the letter patch. That definitely hurt him. You pretty much have to kill people now. You can't just sit in lane and like, I'm going to hit creeps and lifesteal for 1 billion because I also do 1.9x or whatever it is damage to creeps. So yeah, his you can slowly harass a CK down, and a lot of safe lanes can do that, but you can also kill them maybe because CK is still broken in terms of the damage that he does. Omn Knight. I think this is a bounty hunter type hero in the sense that not a lot of people are playing it, but the people that are good at it are playing it and having a lot of success at it. Going for the Aghanim Shard and Echo Saber, where you're just trying to hit people as much as possible, eventually building into Harpoon, pulling people in and beating the shit out of them. Like, this hero can burst you so fucking hard, and it's all pure damage. It's really crazy. But to get to that point, you need to have a good lane. You can definitely get dumpstered in the lane. You can fall off like a Razer can if he dies a couple of times, but at least he'll have some utility. It's just a weird niche pick. That's all it is, but I think it's decent. And maybe a better mid. We'll see. We'll see how the meta shapes once we get another patch where maybe Omni gets a couple of buffs. Next up, we have the B tier, which some of these heroes may surprise you. Enigma is one of those heroes that I consider to be garbage tier for quite some time because he has an ability that fucking costs HP and mana, but now it's decent. On the previous patch, the meta was one of two things. Either option 1, you would build a bunch of Midases on your team and go super late game, hearts, blade mails, all that jazz. Or option 2, you do what Game and Gladiators does, which is you group up and you push and you just take over the map and act incredibly aggressive. Option 1, the Midas one, has been nerfed significantly. And now heroes that group up and push, those are the ones that prevail. Enigma is very good at grouping up and pushing and taking over areas. And then also has just received a buff in the E patch where his black hole cooldown was reduced significantly. On top of that, he builds Vlad's, which was buffed in the E patch. He builds Mechanism, which is a good item for grouping up and pushing and taking over the map. I've seen Meteor Hammer be a thing on Enigma, Solar Crest on Enigma. All of these items are totally viable, reasonable items. My favorite build is probably the Meteor Hammer one. I would say try that first. It looks really fucking good when I see it. So Enigma, good hero. Also, all the counters to him, Rubik, Venge, Silencer, Warlock. Some of these heroes were good and got nerfed. Some of these heroes were bad and are still bad. So the counters to him are no longer an issue. Spiritbreaker. This hero was the absolute scourge of the previous patch, maybe barring Bristleback, who, thank God, he's in the D tier. Thank God this hero's in the B tier, at least. It's not in every single game. The win rate's not that crazy. It's like 46% or something, which is pretty bad, all things considered. But they they increased the charge cooldown, which helps. But the big thing for Spiritbreaker as a core position hero is they reduced the damage that he deals to creeps with charge, which means it's a lot harder for him to charge through a creep wave and one-shot it at an early point in the game, which is a pretty big hit to his economy. So fuck this hero. He can go fuck himself. Lycan. This is a Vlad's hero, and Vlad's heroes are very powerful right now because Vlad's just got buffed. Dom 2 is a good item, and like I said, the meta is shifting towards these ganking mids who are running around and doing shit like the Primal Beast, Earth Spirits of the world, and then the side laners like Wraith King, like Lycan, that the ganking mids can run to and get shit done with, and then when they leave them, these heroes are kind of like unkillable. They can be on their own island and be left alone and be totally fine. Lycan is perfect for that. Legion Commander, she's kind of in the same spot that she's been in for a long time, which is the Blade Mail Rush build on her feels really good because anybody walks up to you, you duel them. She's got good cast range on duel now. Her scaling is great because of duel giving you damage, and then the level 10 talent also giving you extra duel damage. She counters a lot of heroes in lane, but even if you don't, she generally has a pretty good way of laning regardless because she has a great nuke for securing CS, for dealing damage. She can cut waves and heal herself. Legion she's a good hero, but she's been good. Beastmaster, the Aghanim Scepter build for the Drums of Slom, like that's no longer as absolutely insane as it once was, where he was like S tier and you were farming ancient stacks. But still, if you see any good Beastmaster play, they're going to be stacking ancients for a carry that farms ancients with the boar, or they're going to be stacking ancients for themselves. The Hawk nerfs definitely hurt. Otherwise, I think this hero would be higher tier, given that Vlad's is a good item, and given that sitting in the off lane and farming and controlling areas is good. Beastmaster is very good at that, but the Hawk in the early levels is a lot weaker than it used to be. It was very overpowered when they first introduced that mechanic, but Beast is still decent. Dawnbreaker, pretty much I would say Dawnbreaker in pubs is B or A tier, maybe. This is a weird one because it's like, if you were playing with a team and you could bait her ulti and then back off consistently, then she's less good. But she's the biggest cock block in this entire game. And she just sits in a lane and farms and gets giga fat. And you can't push her out of there because she can push the wave out from so far away. And then you try to go on her team and she ults in. Or you try to go on her and she just survives because she has so much HP. She's quite insane, and her level 2 timing is crazy. Like, her laning is so good just because her base stats are really good, and her Q and her W are really good as well. Tidehunter, this is the definition of an unkillable offlaner. People are going Meteor Hammer. They're sitting in the off lane, farming a bunch, pushing the carry out, taking the tower, farming even more in the jungle, and then going mid, taking the mid tower, and just kind of trying to get as much map control as you can. If the enemy team runs at you, Meteor Hammer them after the Ravage. The Anchor on the Aghanim Shard is beyond broken. It's one of the most annoying things in the fucking game. Why does it take so many goddamn hits to kill? Somebody explain that to me. It even slows Lycan down when he's wolf formed, which is crazy. It's very strong. Please make it purgeable or something. Goddamn. Night Stalker. So I think this hero is actually good. The thing with him is like, it has to be a good game for him. If the enemy team has some Naga Siren carry, you feel so bad being Night Stalker. But I've seen Weehaw doing like a Radiance build on carry Night Stalker, which I think is very interesting. Like Radiance plus his W now dealing damage. There's something there maybe. But his ult, it resets all of his cooldowns, which is crazy. You can silence somebody for like 15 seconds straight. At least it feels like that. But it has to be a good game for Night Stalker. Like if you see that the enemy team has Oracle and like Dark Willow, these heroes that are just crazy squishy, and you need somebody to jump them and kill them, like Night Stalker is the best hero in the game at doing that in the offlane. So that's his niche. But if there are none of those heroes and enemy team has some illusion heroes, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. A tier, we have Magnus. This hero, people have essentially realized that, hey, Collapse is good. And he was right about the Eurobacks. People are maxing Shockwave. I think they increased the damage on it, and they also reduced the mana on the ability in the later levels. And so people are playing around Shockwave, maxing it out, pushing people out of lane, not skilling in power as much. Still going for the Harpoon, but there's also more emphasis on Blink Dagger and Refresher and Octarine. So you are getting Harpoon and playing a little bit like that Universal Hero playstyle, but you're also understanding that the utility of the skewerbacks on Mag is worth playing around. Visage. This is the best Vlad's carrying offlaner currently. He's a universal hero, so he really benefits from all of these like plus stat items. He's got some of the best attack range in all of Dota, so the fact that he's universal with giga damage and mega attack range is one of the most annoying things to lane against. That was always an issue for him. Was his like early laning. Now because he's universal, that's not really a thing. The Vlads plus his birds plus a solar crest, which has a plus stat item in it, which he loves to build. Like everything has come together for Visage on this patch, where he is very, very broken right now. A lot of the top offlaners are spamming the shit out of Visage. Kunkka, so the nerfs to him, the big nerf I would say is the Torrent Storm has 1 less second duration on it. And then also Heart got nerfed a little bit, but it hasn't had a profound impact on the hero. It still looks really good. It still lanes really well against a lot of offlaners. It's still that really tanky guy that's a bigger pain in the ass to go kill than it is to just leave him and let him sit there and farm on his own. And then eventually, once he gets the Torrent Storm, Refresher Orb, and all of that bullshit, his utility in the late game is insane, and he's unkillable as well because of Heart. Kunkka is still pretty much the same hero that he was. I would put him in S tier in the previous patch, and now he's in A tier. Centaur. Finally, this hero is actually good. His Q, you can press it, and it can't be interrupted. Like, it's... well, actually, it can be interrupted if you stun him, but it is not... He doesn't just fucking stand there, is what I'm trying to say. He doesn't just stand there and try to stun you, which was very bad before. Like, you can preemptively press it and then blink in and then instant stun people, which makes him a lot better of a blink dagger carrier once eventually you get that at like 30 or 40 minutes, because God knows this hero is going to get some like Vanguard blade mail and become unkillable before then. But the Aghanim Scepter is very good. Putting somebody on a cart, making them immortal, helps against all of the burst that's in Dota right now. The ult, the Centaur ulti, is very strong against some of these like positioning type heroes. If the enemy team has a Muerta or a Drow Ranger and you want to get on top of them, or you want to run away from them once they've committed to a fight, he's very good for that. The cart gives him more duration on his ultimate, which is what was sorely needed with that ability, which is really nice. So Centaur, very good. Also amazing blade mail builder, and blade mail still busted. Wraith King. So this hero got nerfed where the skeletons do a little bit less damage. However, and then also Midas got nerfed, and people were going for like Midas Radiance on him in the offlane. Now the build is, guess what? Blade Mail Radiance. So it's pretty much the same shit. It's just with early game items, because people are playing more early game centric. And then eventually people are still building it to the Aghanim Scepter on Wraith King. And this item just feels not fair. The fact that it gives attack speed means that you can... Like, your carry will always win the 1v1 with their carry. Because think about it. Like, you go late game, right? And in Dota, usually, like, the carry with one extra item, or the carry that wins the matchup because they just picked a better hero, they tip the balance, sure, and they win the matchup, but by, like, 10 or 20% HP. If they were to 1v1 absolutely man fight, well, guess what? Wraith King respawns the one that dies, and then there's a huge window where they have additional attack speed to finish off the enemy carry. So at the very least, it makes it so that your carry will go even in the one-to-one matchup with their carry. And then also this hero scales and is a carry in the offlane as well. Like, think about that for a second. That's fucking crazy. That's fucking crazy. This hero is still very good. Finally, we have the S tier, the truly broken heroes. And then also there's a good times tier. If you want to be really frustrated and confused and have a very difficult game, pick Morphling offlane. It's a great time. Anyway, getting to the actual S tier, this hero's not good on Morphling. I don't know where I would actually put it. I'm not even going to quantify this with a tier. Slardar. So what people are doing right now is they are maxing the stun, and they're going for Octarine Core, Aghanim Scepter, playing around having puddles, playing around having tons of regen, status resistance, being fucking unkillable. This hero has been buffed to the point where he is extremely good. You get extra damage when you're in puddles, and it feels like every single thing on the hero spawns a puddle for some reason. He's really fast in puddles as well, and puddles, like I said, are everywhere. He's got good stats. He lanes really well against a lot of the popular carries, such as Lifestealer. I hate this patch. I hate this patch. I'm so sick of fucking Slardar running at me. It feels like if he goes on you, he just never stops. He would eventually kill you. It is not fun. Oh, yeah. And also, he's a great hero just sitting in lane and fucking you. Like, he goes somewhere and you can't lane against him. And speaking of the same thing, Lone Druid is exactly the same. Pretty much Lone Druid, as an offlaner, you have two options to deal with him. Chaos Knight and Weaver. And even those options are not that good, because you have to kill him. If you do not kill Lone Druid, he will destroy you in lane. The bear is universal. He does a ton of damage. He can go all branches to start because he doesn't need regen, because his W gives regen, which means his diffusal can come at like 6 minutes or something. How the fuck do you deal with that? On this bear that's rooting you and is universal, and then the hero's universal, he starts with like 80 or 90 base damage, depending on what items you get. It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. The hero is nuts. He scales incredibly well. And Yeah, you legit gotta have a roaming 4, which is not even that popular right now other than Tusk, and you have to kill him at the start. Otherwise, the game is just so fucking rough. Brewmaster, very similar. Like, the hero's utility scaling is crazy. The ult still feels like it lasts forever. People are still going for a Radiance. It's just that instead of going for like a Midas, they'll go for a Vessel. Vessel plus his W does a shit ton of damage. He puts on his stances and then brews himself up, and he feels completely unkillable. His Aghanim Scepter is not that good. It's like, it's interesting spawning the little Brewling. I remember people were playing around that for a while, and then people just realized, like, hey, this hero is just busted. Like, the Aghanim Shard is really the crazier thing. Having the extended duration on the pandas. Although I will say that he is a lot more killable now that he cannot just spawn on whatever panda he wants to when he dies, or when he comes out of the ultimate. That was definitely a good nerf to him, but he's still amazing, and he's picked in pretty much every game and has a very high win rate in the offlane. You need to pick very particular carries to deal with him, and even then, he would just hit 6 and then destroy somebody and comes back into the game. Anyway, that's it for this video. I will do the usual, get out of the way, and show you the whole tier list. Who is a good boy, Omn Knight? Yeah. What am I doing with my fucking life?